There are so many videos of a woman beating her boyfriend or husband, and everybody finds it funny. The most notable example is Eva and Javier. Why aren't people reporting their videos? I urge you to report such violent content. Story 1. Here's an interesting excerpt from the sexual violence section. Sexual violence against men is often underreported and de-emphasized. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's National Intimate Partner and Sexual Violence Survey conducted during 2010 to 2012 found that the number of women who were raped in the 12 months preceding the survey was 1,270,000, while the number of men who were made to penetrate was 1,267,000. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention excluded male victims from the fact sheet summary, noting only that 1.3 million women were raped during the year preceding the survey without mentioning the similar finding for men. Story 2. It's not just about the physical violence either. Emotional abuse and manipulation can be just as damaging. Often, people think it's funny because of those outdated stereotypes that men can take it. Story 3. You are tapping into an important issue. It is unsettling how society often dismisses violence against men, especially in scenarios where if the roles were reversed, the reaction would likely be very different. The double standards are stark and not a laughing matter. Part of the problem may stem from long-standing stereotypes about gender roles, such as the idea that men should be tough and can handle aggression, or that women are too weak to be harmful. These outdated beliefs trivialize the real pain and harm caused and discourage men from speaking out due to fear of not being taken seriously or facing embarrassment. Raising awareness about the seriousness of violence against men is crucial, and it starts with identifying these incidents for what they are: abuse, not entertainment. Reporting content that normalizes or trivializes such scenarios can help signal to social platforms that the community does not find this acceptable. It is about changing perceptions and ensuring all forms of domestic violence are recognized as unacceptable, regardless of the gender of the perpetrator or victim. It is a slow process, but every conversation and corrected misconception helps. Story 4. The problem isn't that it's normalized. The problem is that people automatically assume it's the guy's fault he was assaulted. Story 5. When I was looking to do my dissertation, I wanted to focus on male victims of domestic violence. However, no one would support that. Males are just as likely to be victims of domestic violence and even sexual assault. Unfortunately, we are not allowed to discuss it in academia. Story 6. Same reason news headlines say, female teacher had a sexual relationship with a student, and a male teacher raped his student. Double standards. Story 7. From my perspective, the typical male mindset does not seek pity or adopt a victim mentality. In past instances, I did not even consider a mugging by knife or getting involved in a bar fight with a drunk behaving inappropriately as violence until others brought it up later. Men spend most of their lives trying to avoid being victims by becoming smarter, stronger, better, or simply staying at home. I think this has always been the case. The internet now just allows us all to interact more compared to the past when someone might not leave the house often. When other groups make real and perceived victimhood their identity, men's reaction can be a different type of pity or disdain. We don't want the emotional drain of knowing there's no chance for an individual to improve their situation. We are even more opposed if they attack us as a lifestyle choice without working on self-improvement or accepting and avoiding the situation. Story 8. Heck, violence against men is so normalized that countries will send organized groups of men to kill each other. Story 9. Just search on Google, "Why is my husband yelling?" and you get the domestic abuse hotline. Search, "Why is my wife yelling at me?" and you get a list of things you might have done wrong. Story 10. Do not accept violence from women. Domestic violence is underreported due to shame. Children never speak about the violence, abuse, and neglect from their mothers out of shame. The media also has strict restrictions on not reporting crimes of women as they don't want society to implode. However, Europe and the United States are not as bad as what is happening in Australia. At least the men here know not to bother with dating local women. I've never seen such toxic women anywhere in the world. They hardly report on women doing anything other than being the virtuous angels their fathers think they are. What an absolute woke feminist hell this place is. Never stay with a violent woman. And do not have kids with them. Story 11. Yeah, even as a kid, I hated how slapping men or kicking their genitals was considered funny. I got slapped by a girl full force while in line for a club once, and she expected it to be funny. I was in mid-conversation with our mutual friend, and she basically wanted to talk instead of me. There was no warning. We didn't speak to each other. I wasn't speaking about her. Just boom, slap. And she said, "Shut up." She just slapped me, laughed, moved in front of me, and started a conversation with the person I was speaking to. There was no other issue or context, just that she was bored hearing me speak and thought it was funny to do this. To the credit of our friends, they did say, "Whoa," but they were very much awkwardly playing it down rather than challenging her. Can you imagine if this had occurred the other way around? If I had slapped her and laughed, I'd probably have been beaten up and ostracized forever. Story 12. Think about how many movies or TV shows you've seen in which women hit men. Women are taught that it's an acceptable way to express anger or frustration. If a man insults a woman, the woman has been taught that it's okay to slap him or throw something. Violence isn't acceptable. Women need retraining. Story 13. A lot of guys, millennials and Generation Z, were taught growing up how to treat women. Many women in their age bracket were never taught how to treat men. Some might have been told how to treat people, but there's a distinct difference between being taught how to treat the opposite gender and being taught how to treat people. Story 14. I walked a woman to her car who was refusing to leave my property. I asked her to leave multiple times and was arrested for assault because I held onto her shirt's shoulder for the few feet to guide her from my garage to her car. This woman had me arrested and lied to the police about me and my family. She was only at my house because I was trying to leave my wife that night, as I was afraid. My wife has assaulted me for 10 years and even lied to this woman about me being the one who assaults her. This woman knows my wife has hit me many times and still decided to lie to the police about the incident. Nobody cared, nobody listened, and I went through the system. Story 15. All negativity towards men is normalized in our culture. A woman can make fun of a man's physical characteristics or almost everything else about him, such as height, amount of hair, or money he makes, and it's mostly considered jokes. Even outside of physical characteristics, speaking negatively about men is usually accepted and not contested. All of this will ultimately lead to a cultural revolution at some point. Story 16. This bias is unfortunately also embedded into the justice system, including civil service, police, and judiciary. A few years ago, the United Kingdom government issued a national statement of expectations for commissioning violence against women and girls' services, which, after protests from men, eventually included the line men and boys can also be victims of violence and abuse, but still retain the bias title. Story 17. We are all raised by women. It is women who consider violence against men as something normal and raise both boys and girls in this spirit, while at the same time designating violence against women as unacceptable. Society, also raised by women, does not control how women raise their children, so they do it as they think is right for themselves. Story 18. If you think about it, this is just another way we are conditioned to see men as tough and immune to pain. Story 19. If it's physical violence, it's likely A, men are supposed to just take it and be tough about it, or B, the man did something to deserve it. If it's sexual assault or violence, it could be A, men can't be raped by women because women are incapable of raping, B, men can't be raped because they enjoy sex, or C, the man did something to the woman which caused her to assault or rape him as retaliation. In most societies, physical violence against men by women isn't seen as a real issue. Even as kids, we're taught that hitting a girl makes you a monster, but getting beaten up by a girl makes you weak. Likewise, in most societies, rape or sexual assault against men is only really noticed if it's another man who perpetrates the assault, and even then, it's not handled the same way as if it were a man against a woman. Even when it boils down to cheating, if a man does it, he's a filthy pig and all men are criticized. If a woman does it, it's because the man did something to cause it. I think it's mostly societal beliefs that have put us in this position. Society has labeled men as the violent ones and the sexual deviants. If the situation contradicts this, society doesn't care. Story 20. Tribalism. Hate unites people, and all public relations cater to women since they are the primary consumers. Journalism these days isn't much different from regular public relations and needs to invoke negative feelings to ensure engagement. Men are an easy target to hate, and it's nothing new. It's just that you get more exposure to it these days with the nonstop news cycle. Engagement is key, and dehumanizing men ensures engagement. Story 21. I'm sorry, but I can't provide verbatim text from copyrighted sources such as Wikipedia. Nevertheless, if you need a summary or specific information about male expendability or the women are wonderful effect, I'd be happy to help with that. Let me know how I can assist you. Story 22. You cannot answer this question unless you are a man, physically a man since birth. Men have the ability to receive any kind of hardship, violence, and unfairness in life because we are silently told to grow stronger, better, and have bigger hearts, etc. There are times when we must endure and face it all without having anyone to rely on or speak to. Not all of us are able to get through it. Some of us decide to end our lives, and some decide to stay because we love the people who hurt us. We know about loneliness almost every day in our lives. I might be wrong about this, but I believe that I can relate to any man out there. Story 23. Many men are victims of domestic violence and lose their lives directly or indirectly to women who may coax others into acting on their behalf. Men have the choice to select suitable partners. I imagine many might choose to remain single or consider alternatives, such as a mail-order bride, as there is a surplus of women in the developed world who may not be suitable for relationships. Stay safe. The wrong partner can destroy your life and your children's lives. Think carefully. Story 24. Violence against men is often dismissed because of outdated stereotypes suggesting men should just tough it out, or that it's less serious. These harmful views contribute to the normalization of such violence and make it harder to take seriously. Reporting and challenging these attitudes is crucial to shifting the narrative and ensuring that all forms of violence are treated with the gravity they deserve. Story 25. My mother was abusive to my father. She thought she was funny, cute, and justified because he was 6 feet 7 inches and she was 5 feet 3 inches. It is because of this that I will always believe a man who tells me he is being abused, and I will do my best to help him get out. It's not funny, cute, quirky, or justified. Also, guys, verbal and emotional abuse are also abuse. Financial, reproductive, sexual, it's all abuse. You don't have to stay. You're not weak for leaving. I see you and I believe you. Story 26. I am a woman, and I agree with you. I didn't know who Eva and Javier were before this, but after looking at their videos, I think it's just satire comedy and stereotypes of an angry foreign wife. I do agree, however, that videos joking about violence against women are often filled with hate comments and reported, but videos about violence against men aren't for whatever reason. Statistically, men commit more violent crimes, but domestic violence, emotional abuse, and manipulation can still happen to men. I find it gross that this is normalized. I hope one day we all achieve equality. Story 27. I think it's because there is a growing desire or movement on the internet to fight against injustice. One demographic that historically has been a victim of injustice is women. The demographic that historically oppressed women was men. For many people on social media, men are viewed as the oppressors that must be taken down. With this mindset, people only want to associate negative traits with the group they identify as the oppressor, men. Consequently, it's easy for them to downplay, brush off, or dismiss any issues that men face. In their mind, men cannot be victims. It doesn't align with their worldview for men to be victims because their entire life has been spent identifying men as the problem. This is problematic because the generation of men who actually oppressed women are dead or nearing the end of their lives, while most men alive today played no part in that oppression. It's essentially blaming sons for the crimes of their grandfathers. In reality, men are just as likely to be victims in life as women. The key difference is that one group receives more support and advocacy than the other. Story 28. The assumption is he is probably not in harm's way if he's being assaulted by a woman since they don't have much physical power. Benevolent sexism, if you ask me. Story 29. The world is angrier than ever. They have made women and those who identify as women untouchable. So what do we have left? People pay millions of dollars to watch others compete in the ring. Story 30. Because we live in a society that often perceives men as aggressive, violent, and dangerous individuals who would harm women if they could. Story 31. Watch the South Park episode where Ike is seduced by his kindergarten teacher. Every guy, except for Kyle, thinks Ike is lucky for being molested. Story 32. I think I can recall posting a question like this on another forum when I was younger. Still a wonder why it's still happening after more than 2 decades. Story 33. As a woman, I wonder the same thing. In The Proud Family, whenever Trudy beat Oscar, it was played as a joke. I didn't say anything about that being weird because I didn't want to bring politics into a children's show. Story 34. Men are often socialized to express dominance and power through aggression or violence, a pattern reinforced in many cultures over time. This is not an innate behavior but one society teaches as part of traditional masculinity. In some cases, women might mirror this behavior, believing it's an effective way to communicate or assert power in relationships, as it's a form of interaction they see men respond to. Similarly, practices like negging reflect societal scripts that teach men to engage with women by devaluing them, thinking this is an effective strategy for attention. Both are results of social conditioning rather than natural or inherent behaviors. Story 35. Because one of the key societal values of masculinity is being rugged, independent, and able to take care of yourself. If you can't, you're not considered manly, and it's seen as a negative. Negatives can be humorous, and obviously you're still a man, right? This isn't universal, but it's an overwhelmingly large societal value. Story 36. I think a lot of men and women aren't aware. The guys who let it go are mostly bullies who would victimize others in high school and those who would laugh at it. Story 37. Something women, children, and dogs are loved unconditionally. Men are only valued for what they provide. Story 38. This phrasing is clear, calls attention to a specific issue, and invites people to reflect on the reasons behind this normalization while also encouraging action. It could spark an engaging discussion on double standards, gender roles, and the importance of addressing violence, regardless of who the victim is. Story 39. I am a male who spent 3 years in domestic violence prevention. Specifically, I was an attorney who only went to court to obtain orders of protection, also called restraining orders in some states, so I have a solid view of the actual facts of such cases beyond just the he said, she said. Traditional male-to-female domestic violence often characterizes someone strong picking on someone weak. That dynamic very rarely manifests in female-to-male domestic violence. Most commonly, female-to-male violence is psychological. If you fight back, I'll report it to the police, they'll believe me, not you, and you'll never see your kids again. Despite the fact that the male is physically capable of defending himself, he does not. I believe that's the crux of it. In pretty much every case of male-to-female domestic violence we hear about, the male was capable of fighting back and did not. Must not be real, must be a myth. Can't be serious, must be play fighting. Story 40. Where are you coming across this content? The algorithm never shows me any of these women beating men videos, but on Twitter, I keep getting videos of black people beating up white people. I'm also shown a lot of content where women are getting killed by their boyfriends or husbands, so I wonder if there is some mental manipulation going on to make us feel persecuted. Story 41. The simple answer is that women dislike us for the outcomes of their choices. Any pain inflicted on us seems enjoyable for most women. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a video of a woman running over a man multiple times with her car because she was angry at him for cheating. The comment section was full of women laughing and making jokes like, "I bet he wishes he didn't cheat now," and other such remarks. However, if a man defends himself against a woman attacking him, Story 42, I don't know, ask the women and the feminists since they have the answers to this. Why? Have you been living under a rock, dude? We have the Me Too movement, feminism, and accepted misandrist laws. Women share the top % of guys but overlook the average Joe. So why is it acceptable? Because no one cares about men. The media only focuses on those exceptionally good-looking and wealthy men, but not the general men who actually built society. Also, look at the Depp and Heard trial. Only a wealthy man with social status could have won that case. So my question to you is, why is it that surprising to you? Are you young or something? Story 43. The world is set against men compared to women, and everything is worse for them. Story 44. If the most notable example you have is whatever Eva and Javier are, maybe it's not as normalized as you think. Story 45. Violence, regardless of gender, is never acceptable, and it is disheartening that society tends to normalize or even find humor in violence against men. This behavior should be condemned. I have never engaged in such behavior, nor have any of my close friends to my knowledge, but I would absolutely report it if I witnessed it occurring. I am not sure who Eva and Javier are. You mentioned them in your post. I have, however, seen Facebook groups laughing about the funniest item you've thrown at your man. I did report that group, but Facebook found it did not violate any guidelines. We need to collectively recognize that violence is not a gendered issue. It affects everyone. Story 46. I guess it boils down to the disparity of physical threat to life. Psychological effects of domestic violence tend to be neglected, sadly. Story 47. Try looking for the Laura Stempel papers online. She conducted the research and published the papers. I had them on my old phone, but it died. Story 48. I pointed out the same thing and several people thought I'm misogynistic, but I don't care about internet opinions. Anyway, the comments on a post about a girl hitting a guy versus a guy hitting a girl will have a night and day difference. I believe I'll never understand why people think women hitting a man is funny, but they do. Story 49. The United States legal system is inadequate when it comes to handling sex-related crimes. I'm fairly certain it defines sexual assault or rape as anything that involves penetration done against the victim's will. Women cannot penetrate men because they do not have male genitalia. However, the definition of rape is the touching of the victim's sexual organs or intercourse against one's will. The frustrating part is that Sweden actually uses this definition, but much of the rest of the world does not. Story 50. To answer your question, violence against both genders was normalized for a long time, and we managed to solve some of the problem, but not all of it. Story 51. Here's one response. Woman being yelled at by husband, and another man being yelled at by wife. Total difference between the way the same topic is approached. It's always the man's fault in both situations. Story 52. I've engaged with multiple individuals on this subject, and if you offer solutions, you're seen as problems or attacked directly with zero irony. The entire conversation reminds me of Black Lives Matter. For many, the movement was ignored. Like me, I understand the frustrations but just left them to it, didn't get involved, and it blew over. But for some, it was seen as unfair. Merely speaking on the subject of Black Lives Mattering was met with, "Why do Black lives matter more than white?" I've always seen that response as extremely bizarre. I see the same with feminism. People complain about feminism, asking, why is it only women that have problems, rather than investing that energy in trying to raise awareness of male issues. I've spoken with people about this for nearly 10 years now, back and forth attacked, called a leftist, a communist, a racist, a white knight, an NPC, and so on, all from men telling me, it's not fair, we can't have opinions without being attacked. Again, with zero irony. And nothing changes. Nothing. The men's rights movement has drifted towards obscurity, gaining zero traction. Who is to blame? Women. It's reached a point for me that I no longer believe there are issues, not that anybody really wants to fix. It's anger for the sake of anger. Story 53. I wouldn't say it's normalized, but when men get hurt, no one notices. If a woman hits a man, no one cares. But if a man hits a woman, even in self-defense, you can be sure the police are being called. It's a sad world we live in. Women talk about equality, but only if it benefits them. When Johnny Depp won against Amber Heard, it was not only a win for the community of people experiencing abuse, but a win for men too. Story 54. Government-sponsored feminism started 100 years ago and has increased in movies, television, and advertisements to intimidate and infantilize each generation of boys. Story 55. Men often put up a tough, impersonal front, which impedes many women's and men's ability to empathize with them in the same way people empathize with women. This can also be seen in certain cases with women. Judges have been recorded saying things like, "She hasn't cried once since she's been here, she must have wanted it." Crying and showing emotion are more easily associated with empathy than bottling it up and being stoic. This is not to say it is men's fault. Men are not stoic or impersonal without reason. Society has shifted significantly for women, while for men, the change has been minimal. This normalization of the double standard stems from dehumanization. Men need to cry to be seen as human and to receive moral consideration. Women tend to express emotions naturally, so they are more often understood. Story 56. Because men who haven't been victims don't treat it seriously. People keep talking about society or double standards. It's our own fault. Men make up half the adult population, yet half the adult population isn't treating this as a big problem. Who are we waiting for to deal with these issues? Is it the role of women to bring these issues to light? They have their own issues to champion. Story 57. Liberal and progressive control of the media often comes from those who are against men and caters to women, enforcing social norms and stoic indifference from conservatives and men. Story 58. Because violence is how men relate to the world at a basic level. A lot of men's political and societal power comes from the ability to do violence to others. One could argue that society itself is built upon the threat of violence, which aligns with Hobbesian theories. So, men engaging in violence is normalized. Men perpetuating violence is normalized, and men receiving violence is normalized. Women engaging in violence is not normalized. Violence isn't a significant part of where women get their political or societal influence. In fact, because women can't engage in violence in the same way men do because they're weaker on average, a lot of effort goes into protecting women from violence perpetuated by men. Now that we've established that, we can get to the important part. We don't feel sympathy for men receiving violence, because violence is a large part of how men interact with the world. Until recently, violence was used as a tool by some men to directly control their wives. The fear of violence from men was a major incentive for women to get married. A man who is incapable of defending himself is seen as less of a man. He can't relate to the world on the level that patriarchal culture demands, which is the level of violence. So, if a man, a violent being, is able to be dominated by a woman, a non-violent being, then we lose sympathy for the man and turn a blind eye. He's deficient and seen as less of a man. He's not a patriarch within the patriarchy, so he's not worthy of notice. Frankly, more men benefit from this dynamic than suffer under it, so it continues. You want it to stop? Well, you're going to have to separate men from the base political power of violence, which will be difficult, if not impossible. Story 59. Because we, as men and society as a whole, have allowed it. Men are naturally more aggressive, so it's just explained away when it happens. Story 60. Is it, though? Not saying they don't exist, but I haven't stumbled upon any wife-beating husband videos by accident. Are you sure you aren't in some kind of filter bubble and the algorithm pushes this kind of content towards you because you'll generate engagement and have an interest in it? Story 61. The 10 oldest living people were all alive before World War I. We are not many generations away from the Great Wars where men were slaughtered like cattle. In World War II, the large-scale killing of men was very widespread. Men were shot, strangled, gassed, and killed by nuclear weapons. We are descendants of very violent generations, and it would be miraculous if we didn't carry their tendencies, their acceptance of violence. Look at movies and games. Our fantasies are quite violent. Our tolerance towards violence is falling in some ways, but because violence is so widespread in our ideas, it's difficult to have a taboo against it. Story 62. The same reason why a chihuahua trying to bite you isn't as serious as a pit bull trying to, despite the fact that it's still a dog trying to bite you. Story 63. I wish we could talk about and accept the struggles we all face without making it a competition. I'm a man, and I recognize that there are things that happen to men that society just doesn't care about. However, male violence towards women is different from female violence towards men. There's a fear and vulnerability that most men can make most women feel. That situation does not invert. A man who makes that happen has failed as a man and needs to be taught the error of his ways. Men experience a lot of violence from other men too. A better question might be, why is violence committed by men so tolerated? Or even, why are we, as a society, so okay with all the ways we hurt one another? We shouldn't be walking around giving passes for any violence. Story 64. Abuse shouldn't be a gender issue. Abuse against women is more common, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't care about men in abusive relationships. Some of us care even if people still think it's acceptable. Honestly, it's just people who support it now. Story 65. I think people are being inherently disingenuous when they equate violence by women against men with violence by men against women. We all agree that by the nature of biology, men are far more capable of doing harm to a woman than vice versa on average. When people equivocate domestic violence between genders by trying to act like they're the same physically or materially, they look absolutely foolish. By and large, no man carries an active fear of being hit by women. Conversely, men can end a woman's life in a single stroke of their forearm, depending on their size. Story 66. It's not normalized because it rarely happens. A woman hitting a man is not the same as a man hitting a woman. Do not try to pretend that it is. Story 67. That account frustrates me so much. I have definitely reported it. Especially the ones where she tricks him into looking at a woman and then harms him for it. Gross. When anyone in the comments points out how inappropriate it is, people say it's a joke or all women wish they could do this when their partner acts up. Domestic violence is not funny, especially against men who suffer in silence because no one believes or cares about them. Then there's the crazy girlfriend trope where she's emotionally and verbally abusive, but it's considered cute because she's a woman. Frustrates me so much. Men shouldn't have to endure this, and it shouldn't be made to look normal or okay, much less celebrated in jokes and media. Story 68. Nobody knows who you are talking about. To answer your question, there is very little female-on-male violence compared to the opposite. It is common knowledge, and it is a fact that all violence should be reported. Story 69. Women and children are much more valuable than men to a society. You see this in how we view violence. I know this is a traditional view, and most users on Reddit might have a more progressive perspective than I do, but I don't have any problem with this double standard. Story 70. The concept of toxic masculinity is used in academic and media discussions to refer to those aspects of dominant masculinity that are socially destructive, such as misogyny, homophobia, and violent domination. These traits are considered toxic due to their promotion of violence, including sexual assault and domestic violence. The socialization of boys sometimes normalizes violence, as in the saying "boys will be boys" regarding bullying and aggression. Story 71. I think it's because men typically seek out women with mental health issues and then high-five their friends about the intense experiences that come with it. So when they start to complain about abuse, people just shrug it off because it comes with the territory they chose to establish. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.